Hello, and welcome to Risky Routes, a short interview series telling the stories of moments when travel forces you to grow up and adapt fast. Because risk creates perspective, and perspective creates success. We talk about the chaotic, uncomfortable, and borderline bad idea journeys that push people to level up, trust themselves, and take control of their lives. I'm your host, Olivia Goldstein. Today, I am joined by Ron Skylstad, and Ron is the founder and operator of Fieldhouse, a multidisciplinary brand development and creative studio that has been in operation since 2014. He works with organizations of all sizes, consulting on their internal dynamics, and then creating outward facing brand identities, cultures, and experiences. Before launching Fieldhouse, Ron spent 15 years in the nonprofit world, working for organizations in a variety of different roles. This experience taught him how important authentic and effective storytelling is in connecting with others, no matter the message or the medium. Ron's approach is one that he calls heritage informed design, which doesn't look to what's currently trending in order to develop a brand's relevance, but rather its context and internal DNA, then expressing that in a way that builds a sense of trust and long term staying power. So, Ron, thank you for joining me.
Thanks
When
for
you
having
first
me.
reached out, yes, of course, when you first reached out, you caught my undivided attention because you immediately dropped that you had this crazy experience in a remote village in the Amazon. So, would love it if you could share it with me and tell me a little bit more about what happened.
Absolutely. It got started, I think the preamble to actually going on this trip was COVID and the pandemic. As a freelancer, self-employed, and
Mhm.
everything shut down, of course, I got worried. I wasn't eligible for unemployment because I was self-employed. PPP loans weren't available because I was a freelancer. And so my philosophy became to take anything that came my way,
Yep.
which I didn't think was going to be much. But all of a sudden, there were all these people who didn't think they had to exist online or virtually and realized starting today, we now have to. And so I ended up being flooded with work and saying yes to way too much. Q 18 months later, I hit burnout, bad burnout. I was about to leave the house one day, and I remember standing in front of the door to leave my house and looking at the door and not wanting to walk through it. I didn't want to
Oh,
engage with whatever was on the other side of that. I just felt it. I almost didn't just feel anything about it. It was
right.
just, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. Ended up talking with a client and friend a few days after that, and she asked how I was doing, and I said I'm tired, but it's not sleepy tired. It's like internally I'm threadbare. There's just nothing left.
Yeah.
And she said, well, maybe you should just check into a hotel, go someplace warm, go check into a hotel for a week, read a book, and recharge. And I said, honestly, that just sounds like the worst possible thing ever. I don't want to hear kids running around screaming. I don't want to deal with people. Like I don't even
Right.
want to be around people. And she said, well, what sounds good? What do you want to do? And I sat for a second and I said, I want to walk into a jungle and a month later walk out. That's just what came out.
What?
Yeah, and she said, "Well, can you do that?"
Yeah,
And I
right?
said, "Yeah." I said, "I think maybe I might be able to." So I had been on a project in 2019 in the Peruvian Amazon, and through that met some people in Peru, native-born Peruvians, and one of them, his name was Manuel. He was my age. We listened to the same music. We liked all the same stuff, and so while I was there for this project, we really bonded, and then stayed in touch after that. So I sent him a text and said, Manuel, if I want to get out of here, if I want to get away from civilization, from the city, from everything, is there a way I could do that? And he lived in Iquitos, which is in the Peruvian Amazon, but it's a city. And he texts me back and he says, sure. Like, but what do you want? Do you want like hotels, running water, electricity? I said, I don't need any of that. I don't need any of those things.
Wow.
I just want to get out. And he said, I think I understand what you're asking. A week later, he comes back and he says, so there is a brother who is a friend of a friend of a friend who still lives in the village they were born and raised in. And he said, if you're willing to help out around the place, you could go stay with him for as long as you want. And I said, awesome. tell him I'll be
Cool.
there at some point. I booked a flight, I had dates, and I then booked a return flight for 3 weeks later, assuming I'll just go live in this village for 3 weeks, come back, and I'll be good. That was the
Yeah.
extent of my plans. So 9 months later, 6 months or 9 months later, I'm getting on a plane, flying to the Amazon. I land in Iquitos.
Hmm.
Manuel picks me up, and I hop in his truck, and he said, "Ron, there's been a little change of plans." And I said,
Okay.
What are the change in plans?" We had like two steps to this plan. And he said, the brother has moved deeper into the forest to go live in another village to try to find work. You just have to find him and get to that village, and you'll be fine.
Oh,
And I said, "Well, how am I getting? How should I get there? You know, all this kind of stuff." And he said, "I'm going to drop you off here. You're going to take transportation that's going to drop you off at a town that's literally at the end of the road. Once you get there, you have to coordinate a boat to get to the village. Tell them the name of the
yeah.
village. Find someone who's willing to take you there, and then you'll get to the village and everything will be fine." I said, "But how is he going to know I'm at the village once I get there?" And he said, "He'll know. Don't worry about it." So I didn't worry about it. I do all these things, coordinate a boat. I take a boat that's going upriver all night, all the next day. It's this whole thing. 16 hours later, I get dropped off on a riverbank at
Uh-huh.
this village. And there's some other people in the boat that are getting dropped off at this village, and the people in the village are coming out and they're meeting them and they're taking back into the village, and I'm just standing there with my big backpack and another bag on the riverbank, and nobody's coming out to meet me. So I think, okay, well maybe the brothers doesn't know yet, but I was told
Right.
he'll know when I arrive, so I'll just sit here.
Right.
So I sit there and I'm sitting there and about a half hour after I'm sitting there, someone comes out from the village, and I know I like 17 words in Spanish. I had meant to get better. It just wasn't working. And now I'm in a place where there's like no
Nope.
English,
No English.
no English, and they're coming out and through basically hand gestures and what little Spanish I know and
Yeah.
what they could kind of muster, they basically were saying, "Do you know where you are? Can we help you get home?" And I was saying, "No, I'm supposed to be here. I know where I am. I'm
Yeah.
supposed to be here, and so is going to come and meet me." And they said, "Well, we don't know anyone by that name. They don't live here." And I said,
Oh,
"Okay, well,
geez.
I'll wait a little bit more." I ended up sitting there for about 4 hours, just getting eaten up by insects, baked under the sun.
Yeah.
Multiple times people came out and said, "Do you?" They want to know why
Yeah.
this gringo's just sitting on the edge of the river outside their village, convinced I was lost, convinced I needed help getting home. And at a certain point, after 4 hours, I realized the situation I was in
Hmm.
and the weight of it. There was no cell signal. My cell wasn't working in country. There's no Wi-Fi. Nobody there knows me. Nobody back home is waiting to hear from me for 3 weeks. And this is day three. And so I
Right.
had this moment of panic. And I gave myself like 5 seconds to internally freak out and say, "Oh no, oh no, oh no, what did I do? Maybe I should have planned better. Maybe I should have thought about this a little bit more. How did I end up in this situation? Who makes these kinds of choices?" Why
Yeah.
am I here? I let it all flow through me, and then I stopped and said, "Okay, I need shelter, I need food, I need water. I need to figure out what
Yeah.
I'm going to do." The boat's gone. There is no other boat, as far as I know, coming by. There's no quick
Right.
escape on this. So I realized I've got to figure this out. So I end up finding a place where I can rent a bed. They rent beds to like itinerant workers that come through.
Yeah.
So I rent a bed there. I find a place where I can buy some food and that sort of thing. It's kind of a little home market in this tiny little village that someone had set up, and I just realized I've now got to make this work for the next 3 weeks, essentially, and I'll just figure it out day by day.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was kind of the start of things. And of course, there's all sorts of stories. I end up at one point befriending this old man who has like one silver tooth, and
Yeah.
he's like, "Why are you here?" And I said, "I just want to go out into the forest and I want to see. I'm really interested in natural history, so I said I'd love to see the frogs and the plants and the fish.
Yeah.
I just need to find someone who has a boat or could drop me off on the other side of the river. It looks like I could just explore there." And he said, "Well, I'll take you." And so I end up going out with this man. He's this old man, and he's taking me in the streams, and he makes his own
Oh,
fishing hooks and his own fishing poles. And I'm going out with him and his wife, and we're fishing, and he's showing me the plants, and he's telling me what they do. And so we would go out and take these trips
yes.
and these excursions and these adventures, and but there was a lot of downtime in between, and I had forgotten to take earbuds. There's no
Yeah.
Wi-Fi, there's none of this, and so I didn't have any distractions, and I
Yeah.
had to sit with myself for a lot of hours.
Yep.
The two things I
Yep.
had brought with me was a journal, just a
Okay.
blank journal, and for whatever reason, before I left, I had purchased it but not started reading it, the memoir of Chef David Chang. And it was sitting there. And on my way out, I grabbed it and I'm like, sure, I'll read it on the
Right.
plane. And so I find myself sitting there. At this point, I'm literally living on like beer and bread and water
Yeah.
each day. And I'm sitting on a bench in the village and I'm journaling. And I'm sitting with
Wow.
myself and I'm thinking about all sorts of things. And I hit this point in the book where David Chang says he didn't actually plan for success. He didn't
Yeah.
think anything was going to work out. He didn't think this restaurant he started would be successful. He assumed it was going to fail within a year and that would be it. And then a decade in, 15 years in, suddenly realized he didn't actually have a plan for success. If he
Right.
was going to continue being successful in his life, he probably should start coming up with what to do. And I had this realization that I had approached my career and a good chunk of my life in
Hmm.
that similar mindset, but not even conscious that that had been my mindset.
Sure.
Everything I was doing, well, I was lucky to get this, or I was lucky to have this, or
Yep.
I was lucky that they chose to hire me, and sat there for a second and said, well, what if that perspective isn't true? What if that was a false perspective? What if I
Yeah.
actually do have something to offer? Right? What if
Yes.
I actually do? What if and then I suddenly realized however many days I was into this trip, holy crap, I'm pulling this off. I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Nobody's heard from me in a week and a half. And they don't know what's happening right now. And then it was suddenly, I'm in the Amazon. I'm sitting on a bench in a village
Right.
that's like just this side of Ecuador, and I'm becoming friends with people, and I'm going out with this old
Yeah.
man, and we're doing all this stuff, and I'm realizing all this stuff about myself. And one of those realizations was, oh, I'm capable. Oh, I have what it takes to actually
Right.
do things. How many people end up in this situation, period? And then how many people end up in this situation and pull it off well? And I
Yeah.
realized I was pulling it off well. I was succeeding at it. And so I started then processing everything from this new perspective and journaling about it and sitting with myself, which I think for a lot of us, and especially in an age of distraction, that's a very uncomfortable thing
It's,
to do,
it very much so, right?
right?
Yeah.
Um, and so I started sitting with those uncomfortable things and like, okay, when I'm in this situation and I start to feel this way, why do I feel that way? What does that
Right.
say about me? Is there something I need to shift there or whatever? Um, and so yeah, I started thinking, well, what else is possible? If I've been running at that time, I've been in business for about 10 or 11 years, and
Yeah.
if I've been running my business from the mindset of, well, I'm just lucky it's still going. I'm lucky it's still going. I'm lucky it's still going, and then reframe it. Well, what if I just assume it's going to keep going? What if I assume this
Yeah.
is going to be successful and I don't have to be in survival mode this whole time? What then changes? Or how I interact and relate to clients, or even how I interact and relate to people in my life. Have I been showing up just thinking, well, I'm just lucky to have these friends, or I'm lucky to be a part of this thing? What if I came in and actually had something to offer and something to give? Which, of
Yep.
course, everybody in my life assumed, but that
Right.
hadn't been that hadn't been my operating assumption. So then I decided, okay, when I go back, I'm now going to re-engage all these things from a completely different standpoint.
Yes.
Um, and thinking of everything from time and investment in relationships as currency. And I kept thinking about this phrase, we pay people attention. And if everything we do is some sort of exchange, even if it's not a literal monetary exchange, right? So if
Right.
I'm going to pay something attention and I have this limited amount of what I can invest in, what are those things I actually want to pay attention to. So I started thinking about that from relationships, jobs, work. What am I saying yes to that I don't want to say yes to? What are the projects
Right.
I'm taking on that I don't need to take on anymore?
Right.
And I can actually really start, doing the work I want to do.
Yeah.
I started just refiltering everything from that point.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it is an incredible story, and the courage that you have to be able to just, one, be self-aware enough that it's like, I mean, everybody at whatever point in your career, everybody at some point is going to face a point probably where they feel like they're burning out, right? Where you can
Yeah,
actually fully find a way to unplug that serves you to like
yeah,
refind and recenter yourself. It is incredible, and the leaps and the that you took to really get there, and that what
yeah.
you decided to figure out on your own is absolutely commendable and impressive. But it's like I love this experience because you kind of went into it initially with this mindset of like, okay, I have this problem, right? And I just need to like fully unplug. Like I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll figure it out. And then what
Right.
ended up happening is like you sort of, with that like free time and the experiences and the people you met along the way, you pulled at like all of these different threads that really helped redefine how you think of your life, your career, and all of these other things. Like, I mean, one is like, I say this over and over to like everybody I talk to, but truly, like, time is our most valuable asset, right? And it's like
Yeah.
you recognize that this was challenge one, is like you were kind of approaching everything you were doing with like this mindset of this might be the last like survival mindset. This might be the last job.
Right.
I might run out of money. Well, but it's like, well,
This
no,
is the
like,
last client I ever get ever,
yeah,
and
like,
then it's all done after that.
and it's
Yeah.
like when you think like that, then you take on more than you can do, and it's like you're not really
Yeah.
bringing your full self to anything either,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
it's like I love it because now you're able to like say yes and no to the
Mhm.
right opportunities, which is huge. That coupled with like how you think of like relationships in general too, right? It's
Oh,
like you
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
be more
yeah,
present with people and not like and appreciate the time that you have, right? And it's like I'm sure you met so many characters on this experience, and it's like you take these moments where you realize like this is what life's about, just like connecting with people, building relationships, and just like being present. And in
yeah.
the age of distractions, like and everything that's going on, like that's hard to do for people, right?
Yeah. And I think we, and I know I did, we start to think of ourselves as burdens. Everybody's
Yep.
busy, and I don't want to, I know you're busy, but, and
Yeah.
I'll even have friends who reach out, or they're in town and they're saying, I know you're busy, but if you find time to get to, and I say, you're important. I'm going to
Yes.
make time for us to get together. And that's how I engage it now rather than before. I'd be, oh, I'm
Yeah.
busy. But no, you're important. I want to invest in this. I want to hear about what's been going on in your life. I want to invest in this relationship. I want this to be a thing that is part of my life. So
Yeah.
let's be honest about it. Let's be real about it. But I realize that's a way I can speak that into other people's lives. And
I
I
love
work
that.
with a lot of people launching businesses for the first time.
Mhm.
A lot of them are solopreneurs, or they have a team, but they're still, in charge, and they wrestle with a lot of these same things that I've had to process, of the self-doubt, of the insecurity,
Yes.
and so realizing what I took from that situation and then being able to speak that into their journey and process as I'm working with them to help build aspects of their brand out, to help them realize they do have what it takes. You
Yeah.
can pull this off. All of those things end up coming out through that work relationship with clients as well.
Right, totally. So overall, how long were you there? 3 weeks?
Yeah, yeah. And it's a little blurry because there were times where there were some buffer time zones and all of
Yeah.
that. But yeah, totally I was gone for 3 weeks.
Did you ever meet Manuel's brother?
I did. His the brother of a friend of a
The
friend.
brother of the friend of the,
I
yeah.
did. He actually showed up a few days later. It wasn't a great situation.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, I was like, okay, I think I'm just gonna do my thing. Don't worry
Yeah.
about it. I don't need to
Yeah.
crash at your place. Uh, we're good, but let's not worry about it. So he
Yeah.
ended up showing up, but it definitely wasn't the day I was there.
Did you learn Spanish?
I got better. And
Yeah.
that's another that was another aspect when I say I wasn't just distracted, I
Yeah.
also largely couldn't communicate. So it's a
Right.
whole other thing to feel that level of isolation when you are just there and you can't even communicate on a basic level to for 3 weeks essentially I was just in my head in many ways and with
Well,
myself. But I did
you
learn
figured out a way to
Spanish.
do it, right? Like you figured out a way to communicate with people to get the things you needed, right? It's a
Exactly. And I was willing. I'm okay kind of looking the fool, okay,
yeah,
I'm going to try. I'm going to try. And what I found is if you try and you make an attempt, that creates a bridge. And
yeah,
so a lot of times someone would sit down next to me and they would say, I learned a little bit of English when I was in school, but I haven't spoken it since.
right.
Could I practice my English with you? And I would say, well, if you're okay with my really bad Spanish, can I practice my Spanish? And so we would go back and forth and find common words and talk about stories. And of course, they'd want to hear where I'm from and do I have a family and kids and what do you do back in the States and why are you here again? And all of these conversations would happen. And so yeah, I would learn piece by piece more Spanish. And as I've come back, have tried to keep up on it. But yeah,
That's great. So, Ron, I do a lot of work with entrepreneurs, so I'm a little bit biased. And it sounds like you work with a lot of solopreneurs and stuff too. Burnout is very real, right?
yeah,
Which you
yeah,
mentioned. And the other point that I think you mentioned is it's especially when you're building a business, it's easy to doubt yourself and to have a lack of confidence because you're constantly being surrounded by, customers, investors, whatever it might be, people telling you no, especially in the early days. So, like,
yeah.
from this whole experience, what advice would you give to people like that are maybe suffering from both of those activities where they let like kind of in a similar place where you were, where they maybe are, feeling like they don't have the confidence levels that they're maybe saying yes to more things that they should, and or they might be on the verge of burning out. Like, what would you suggest to them?
Two-part answer to that. The
Yeah,
first is I don't think I think the reason we burn out is because that system and way of living and working isn't sustainable. And I
right.
think the burnout is the warning sign of you can't keep doing this. So I
Hmm.
think at some point that has to change. And that was a scary thing for me to wrestle with. Like,
Yes.
can I not do this work anymore? Or do I have to change how I do the work? If I'm constantly working like I'm behind, behind, or I'm trying to
Yeah.
appease this client or make this client happy, I don't need to work like that anymore.
Yep.
So what does it mean to not work like that anymore? So it's a lot of assessing what is the situation, what are the things that are causing you stress. And I think we have to change what that looks like, whether it's your routine throughout the day. I actually have implemented and tried to take slower mornings, ramping
Yep.
up to go to work rather than just getting out of bed and okay, I got to get right to it. I actually ease into it through
Hmm.
just sitting with a cup of coffee and reading something and then
Yep.
thinking about how that's going to apply to my day. So, and then the type of work I take on. But I think we actually have to change the structure
Yeah.
and way of living that created that in the first place because I don't believe any amount of time off is going to be a cure if we keep going
Exactly.
back to the structure that was the problem in the first
Yeah.
place.
You have to get to the underlying root cause. Like just and this is where I struggle too. It's like a vacation or time off isn't enough if you're going to come back to the same mess and chaos, right?
Exactly. Right. And
Yeah.
I'm probably going to burn out. It's going to become like a half-life at that point. I'll burn out
Yeah.
in 6 months rather than 18 months. And it's just going to
Yeah.
keep getting worse and worse and worse. So it becomes this self-replicating problem. So I think we have to change that structure. I don't know that it's always a new career.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just tweaking the existing thing.
Yeah.
Um, but then when it comes to how we engage it and the confidence and all of that, and having the self confidence to be able to do it, I ended up coming up with. I sat there one day. I'm sitting on this bench and writing like, okay, what is it? What is it going to take for me to succeed? What does that look like? And I
Hmm.
came up with four things that I then started applying to my work with clients to help them figure things out through all of
Yeah.
this, their own self doubt. Um, the first thing was embrace your weird. Like the thing that makes you stand out, the thing that makes you
Yeah.
unique, that's probably what's going to make you successful. And I
Yeah.
think we spend a lot of time, none of us want to stand out. None of us want to become a potential target, even if it's just ridicule or
Right.
hearing, well, that's a dumb idea.
Yeah.
But we have to be willing to hear that and realize the way we see the world is actually a beneficial, positive thing. And so we
Yeah.
have to embrace what makes us stand out. The other thing is the second thing is find your crew, find the people you trust, the people who are going to support you.
Yeah.
Also, the people who are going to call you out. You know, that'll
Yeah.
be like, "Hey, you keep doing this thing. I don't know what that's all about. Like, what's
Yeah.
going on there?" But they're coming to you in love, saying, "Hey,
Yeah. They're like pushing you,
yeah,
pushing.
they're pushing
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a little bit, maybe not criticism, but critique. Like, hey, what's this
Yeah.
about? Mentors, all of that, whatever that crew looks like, find those people that you trust. Um, the third thing is own your stuff, own your crap. Like, if you've got self work to do, figure
Yeah.
it out.
Yeah.
Because if you don't own it, eventually it's going to own you. And
Yeah.
success doesn't erase all of that stuff. Success shines a light on it. So if you're nervous, if you're insecure and you're looking for validation, the minute your business or brand suddenly becomes incredibly successful, that doesn't disappear. You might then become even more concerned about how many likes or
Right.
the level of engagement you're getting and doing things that aren't in line with your brand just to alleviate that, feeling of insecurity. And so
Right.
that then goes back to embrace your weird and finding your crew and dealing with your stuff so that when you do hit success, it's not clouding your decisions and
Yeah.
those. And then the other thing was just stay in it.
Yeah.
When it's hard, when it's difficult, if you've got your crew,
Grit.
you understand your value, and you've worked through your things. What do they say? It takes 10 years to be an overnight success. And I
I
see a
know.
lot of
Yeah.
people bail too early.
Yes.
They launched their website. We've spent however many months building their brand identity and their website and what this experience is going to be, and they launch it on day one,
And it's not a success, and
and
they
it's
want
not
to
a
go,
well,
yes.
and they think the world's just going to be,
Yeah.
piling over themselves at them, but nobody
Yep.
knows about them yet. The
I know.
marketing hasn't even started. So
Yeah.
you've got 9 months to listen to crickets until
Yeah.
people start walking out of the field toward your brand. And so
Right.
even that, you've got to figure out how do you get through that time. And you have to just keep doing the work. So
Right.
those were the things I pulled out of that experience that I started implementing in my work with clients to help them through their own
I
sort of
love that.
heading up a
That's so
river.
so powerful. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing this and for sharing your story. It resonates so much with me personally. Which, by the way, funny story. My younger brother lives in Peru.
Oh,
Um,
fantastic.
yeah. So I have a soft spot for Peru, and his wife is Peruvian, so he moved there for her. When they first started dating, she didn't speak English, and he didn't speak Spanish. So that's like the biggest mystery of how they communicated. But it's like, yeah,
It's
it's
amazing when I tell
possible.
people, "Oh, I had this
Yeah.
conversation and we talked about this," and
Yep.
they're like, "Did you?" And I said, "Yeah,
Yeah.
but we didn't. Like we didn't. It made
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
We knew what we were saying.
You find a way. You
You
find a
figure it
way.
out."
Hand
Yeah.
motions and
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
So it's a really special story for on that front because obviously Peru is a soft spot for me on a personal level, but just how your experiences shape a lot of the business owners that I work with. I see. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur by background too, and it's like all of
Yeah.
these challenges are things that they struggle with. So thank you for sharing both your story and your experiences in your playbook for how people can be thinking about these things as they're running their business or running into challenges in the workplace. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Ron.
Thanks.